When it comes to great HBO series, two names commonly will ring out and have garnered traction again 20 years later. What's more impressive is that these two series have premiered around the same time. Of course, I wasn't old enough to remember the discourse surrounding them during their peaks, but I have recently finished both these series with a respective gap between them to fully digest each series. And as far as things go, I wouldn't say either of these series are perfect, or rather, how people have made them out to be. But that's not to say these series are not good, as they are good. In this video, we will go into depth and compare and contrast the two to see which may have been better in their peaks. Without further ado, let's peel it back.
1, 2, 3.
First, theme. As for this, both come really close to each other. The Wire follows a pretty generic theme, following a group of detectives keen on charging everyday hustlers with charges to get them incriminated. In the midst of it, following the inner city life and the subcultural warfare of the street life in the dog-eats-dog world, vividly showing the systematic hierarchy and means of building street creds to take over the crown. The Sopranos, however, follows a more intricate and unique approach, taking the intertwined battles of mafia boss to mafia life. It's a bit more introspective as we delve into the biggest mob life of the biggest mob family in New Jersey and how it affects their livelihood. Although both are done well, Sopranos overall has a better theme. There's a lot to like in both casts. As for The Sopranos, it's mainly focused on Tony throughout the series as a focal point. There's moments you can really like him and moments not so much, which exemplifies the overall theme. Whereas The Wire, the torch is partially passed around. For the most part, it is McNulty, but his role isn't as prominent come the passing of Stringer Bell, which really adds to the flavor of the series because that's how life is. It goes on. I would say both are equal here, and the two share relatively similar traits for what it's worth. If we're going to be honest, right off the bat, it's The Wire here, and it's not really close. The Sopranos has some really likable characters, and some that are hard watch and even annoying at times. Of course, there's some rotten apples in The Wire too, but nowhere near as intolerable as The Sopranos. What The Wire does well is really how they utilize those side characters, as everyone is constantly hungry for the spot. Those who aren't serve as an aid for those in power, not only for heavy lifting, but also as brains. This isn't only prominent in the street life, but also in the political and societal life. And then there's antagonists. As you can imagine with the characters and main character points, The Wire takes the cake here as well. There's some good antagonists in The Sopranos, don't get me wrong, but none that really seem to pose a huge threat against Tony. The antagonists do shift throughout the series, with Richie possibly being the best off the list. However, so does The Wire and a large array of them. Old-fashioned gangsters like Avon Barksdale, to cunning masterminds like Stringer Bell, to intellectual lone wolves like Omar, to more ruthless, strong-minded hustlers like Marlowe. In most of these cases, the antagonists have a strong support. As we see with Marlowe and Avon, a big reason they got that far was due to the very smart right-hand mans they had. However, Omar is the best written antagonist in the series from start to finish. This directly coincides with the antagonist, so I won't waste too much time on it. The conflict being internal in The Sopranos makes it a roller coaster of emotions. The conflict in The Wire being subcultural is forever changing and keeping you at edge. Both are great, but The Wire executes it better over time. However, when only focusing on main characters, I'll say this is even. I'd like to go into screenwriting. I think The Sopranos have the edge on this. They seemed a lot more submerged into the Italian and Jersey culture aspects. I am a fan of idioms, and The Sopranos has a long list of them. Also, the very old sarcastic humor no one seems to use anymore. So, Sopranos take it from me here. Like I stated, there's a lot to like about both these series. And maybe I might make a video one day separately for both, somewhere down the line. When only looking at Tony on the mafia aspect, it's a well-written story through and through. You get a feel for every decision and emotion in every scene. Great performance by the late actor. But you also have to take into account for other characters they play into the story. Don't get me wrong. Anyone who was inside the mafia gang, who had time to sip a cold one in the bada bing, were well written. They're played out just as well as Tony. It's more the side characters that hurt the story, such as AJ, Tony's sister, Meadows' black boyfriend, and so on. Since this was a series based on conflict with Cell, he focused more on how every character is written rather than what they do. Some hurt the story more than they helped it. As for The Wire, them constantly changing players helped deter any flaws from a character or one hurting it in the long run, which helps the story flourish overall. Due to having so much to work with, it also plays into real life street life, living the fast life. You see how rapidly things change, and all those changes play a part in society, and vividly showing the paradigm shift coming with it and how it affects the world around it. As you know by now, both these series have their flaws, as any series does. Although I ranted about some already, I don't think those were what entirely dragged either series. So, let's really look into what dragged them for me. As for The Sopranos, there was one that really stood out, mainly for it being such a peculiar take, and that being the advertising. After I believe maybe season 2 or 3, Sopranos turned into a big advertising campaign for luxury brands, companies, and the sort. At first, they play into the story a bit. It still was evident, but Tony's fling waking up Mercedes helped a bit. After that, they just took it upon themselves to start marketing everything. I mean, they could have just had ad breaks for what it was worth. Another one being how weak-minded everyone got. I understand this is an introspective series and played on the events unfolding with regards to the political and societal shifts in the world, but it got to the point where it seemed like a trauma dump. You know, you can even blame Tony for it. Him mouthing off he had a therapist possibly created the butterfly effect into which everyone else got comfortable enough to be sensitive and weak. It got to a point you couldn't tolerate most characters because they were so weak. And it irks even listening to them because none of their adversities are as trivial as they make it. Even some of the older characters. However, I'd say AJ was the start of it in terms of playing into other characters. He was supposed to be a mafia son affected by the conflicts of the mafia world while digesting the changes of the real world, making him a fake woke, lazy, soft character. I'm not sure if it was to make fun of the upcoming generation or just poorly written. Nonetheless, many more picked up on some of these traits. Also, a smaller one was the police sort of just giving up on catching the Sopranos. I mean, ever since the lamp incident, they didn't make any real efforts to try and catch these guys. As for The Wire, it wasn't so much as how they went about it, but just how much they added. The whole second season was dragged out. You could figure out the storyline and the case details within the third episode. Literally, how everything unfolded. I understand them playing a role into the drug war, but they didn't need a whole season for that, as they're not real players into the story and it took away from the Avon art. It dragged the show by a lot and had me question why people even thought this series was so good. Needless to say, Nearly every important character that was in season 2 that wasn't in season 1 was annoying, except its security girl Beatty and Spiros Bundas, who plays a part later into the series, same as Beatty. Another aspect being playing into the political aspect too much. Season 4 of The Wire would have been perfect if they focused even more on the kids and how the streets changed them. However, they spent a great deal following the campaign of some privileged white guy who they tried to parade as a white knight of Baltimore. Needless to say, he was also annoying, but his character sort of made sense. And he was still important in the story, but not as much as they made him to be. Spoiler, like all politicians, he lied. So, making the huge focus on his character even more meaningless. They knew as much as anyone that a white person doesn't fit in this story and this city. However, that didn't stop them, despite saying it over and over again throughout the whole series. It was possibly the worst choice they could have made for mayoral campaign and the overall Black America street-focused story. A privileged white knight with a punchable face. Wow. Also, the news outlet. Literally no one needed this as much as they focused on it. We didn't need to know about the internal conflict in their cubicles. Sure, they played an important part, but the same role could have been played without the camera shifting to them every 5 minutes. This took a lot from the original theme of the story and took a lot from the overall growth of the important characters. I think season 4 and 5 had the potential to be the best written seasons ever in television history. Had they focused more on Marlowe, nurturing the kids to gangsters, and the effects of being a kid in the inner city, subcultural warfare, rather than a white knight in the news. Don't get me wrong, these are both solid series and worth a watch, if you find the time. As for how people make them out to be, I wouldn't say they're on par with what others say it to be. If I had to throw numbers on it, I'd say The Wire is a high 8, and The Sopranos, a cool little light 8. And that's all for this video. If you're not already, be sure to like and subscribe. I'll be comparing more series down the line. Without further ado, take care and have a good one.